It's been a while since I've done an Amazon Wheel of Time video. The main reason why is, well, Season 2 may or may not drop sometime in spring of next year. If there is something that is worth seriously considering and looks of any importance, I will make a video about it. However, one of the really wonderful things that's happened in covering Wheel of Time is that I have met so many other passionate fans and readers of Robert Jordan's works. Some I've done live shows with, and some I only know through social media. And there are others that decided to become members of my channel and become my wolf brother or my wolf sister. I sat down with several people whose opinion and appreciation of Robert Jordan I respect. I asked them all the same questions without any prompting or hints as to what we were going to cover, and these are the responses they gave to me.
I was in the 7th grade, and I had just got done reading Terry Brooks novels. And I think I'd read a couple, maybe one or two other series in between that, but I hadn't found anything that hit me just right. And then I picked up the Wheel of Time. It was in my school library, and they only had the first and second book. And I believe there was only like 7 books out at the time or something like that. But I was young, and I started reading it. And the first time I read it, it was so hard for me to take it in because it was so deep and so complex that I'm thinking in the 7th grade, it was just difficult for me to really grasp it all. It wasn't as simple as like Terry Brooks is a little simpler, a little more straightforward. But then about a year later, I reread it because I knew I liked it. I just couldn't fully grasp it. And that's when I fell in love with it because of its epic, deep, detailed. The characters are so personal, and that's what I fell in love with. And then I would read like the first 1 through 5 books or whatever, 1 through 6 books it was out. And then when 1 or 2 more books would come out, I'd do it all over again. And I've been doing it until the book series finished.
Well, for a number of reasons, I suppose, but it's probably the first sort of epic journey that I discovered post Lord of the Rings as a young man, I suppose, in high school. But like I found when I was a young person reading these books that the gender dynamics and the commentary, I suppose, that Robert Jordan was trying to make on what the world might look like with a different power structure from a matriarchy, patriarchy sort of situation, which was probably more relevant back then than it is now, to be honest, was intriguing to me as a young man. And I found that to be interesting. If you sort of flipped a lot of the power dynamics in our world to where females had more powerful type positions or a reason to be in that situation, like how different relationships would develop and how they would appear. And I felt that he did that in a really subtle way, which actually made you think at the time about how those things, you know, reflected in our world, which is not what Judkins did.
I feel like I was most like Matt growing up because I always tried to be the comedian. I always tried to be funny. He was a little bit less reluctant or more reluctant to work than I was, but he definitely had the attitude. The go screw off. I'm going to do what I want, and I'm here to have a good time, not here for a long time. I like that. Turned a pure-hearted boy. He tried to act like a bad boy a little bit, or like he didn't care, but he obviously loved his friends, very dedicated, constantly putting his life in danger for them. And he turned him into a drug addict who steals from women and I think literally doesn't care about anybody. Like, that was a persona. He actually cared. He pretended not to care. This dude, this Matt, does not care. Legitimately. So they took his heart and they destroyed it. I hate him.
That's easy. Mat Cauthon, the Prince of the Ravens. Again, for a number of reasons, really, but it was just his attitude towards life and towards crisis situations where someone had to take the lead or someone had to do something, and he didn't necessarily want to do that ever, but he just found himself doing it. And it was this conflict between Matt's inner monologue and his external actions was what's fascinating, and I related to that I related to that. I still relate to that, to be honest. Like the ability that Matt had to take charge of a situation, the way that he responded to crises is probably something that I identify with really well. So he just sees a problem and he just goes and fixes it. There's no hyperbole, there's no exaggeration, there's no like sort of emotion attached to it. He just tries to figure out what needs to happen, and then he will do it. And he does it to protect the people that he loves. In any other situation, he's a bit like a crocodile. Like, he's lazy, and like he'll sit down, relax, he'll have a dice, he'll have a drink, all that sort of stuff, which I also relate with quite strongly. But when it's time to go, he goes fast and he goes hard, like a crocodile. Well, he's turned him into a degenerate thief, I suppose, and I can kind of understand the motivations for that. And early Matt is pretty boring, to be honest. So, like, I can understand the motivation behind trying to give him a bit more interest as an early character before the real Matt comes out, which isn't until book 3. So I understand maybe the motivation behind that, but the way that it was executed I don't know how they're going to pull it back. I don't know how you get fun-loving, smarty pants hero that doesn't want to be a hero but will do it regardless, almost without his own volition. I don't know how they're going to do that. Taking away the cheeky, and they'll say that it's because they've aged him up, so they had to change these things. I don't buy that, to be honest. They've taken away his good family, his good roots. He was just the village rogue. That's what Matt is. He's literally the epitome of the lovable rogue, and they've taken that away from him. He's not that person. There is still notes of Matt in the show, or the first few episodes anyway. And I think that the actor that they had play him clearly read the material, because you could almost see that there was times, despite the script, despite the writing that he was given, where he would just have these little Matt inflections, which would have been really difficult with this sort of like all of a sudden this dark, degenerate thief personality that he's now supposed to have. But he still managed to get a bit of Matt in there. So that's a credit to that actor, and he's not there anymore. So we'll see what happens with the new guy.
I mean, it was almost immediate. It was almost immediate that I knew something was wrong. As soon as I saw Rand messing with Egwin, as soon as I saw it, whichever character was first, I forget. But as soon as I saw any of the characters acting out their character, I knew something was severely wrong with what was going on. I knew that I could not enjoy the show. But I watched until episode 4. But episode 4, I kept saying, maybe they'll turn it around. Maybe someone will speak to him and be like, hey, we need to, curb this back. We need to pull something back. But episode 4 is like, there's no turning back. This is destroyed. There's no reason for me to watch this anymore. I need to go find something else because you can't save it.
I think by the time I got to episode 5, when we had, considering all the things with our main characters, or the story, the nucleus of the story that had been either cut or glossed over or completely changed sideways. By the time I got to episode 5 and they start adding in these extra things to show parts of the story that they wanted to highlight, like the water bond and that sort of thing, that's when it became pretty clear that it really wasn't an adaptation. And I know that at first it was kind of cool to see like things that happen off the page in the books to be able to see them in the show, like the Trolloc attack at Emmons Field. Like, you don't see that when you read the books, you see the aftermath. And again, it comes back to, Robert Jordan did that for a reason, because he was telling a different story. And so that's where when you go back and you look at it again. But the ramifications for the story means that now it's not an adaptation. That's just how it is. It's literally their own story, using the characters, using the IP to make a TV show. But it's not going to be the Wheel of Time. I don't think they can get it back on track. I know that they've said that they're going to try and get it back to more like the books for season 2, season 3. I'm interested to see how they pull that off, because I can't see how that can happen.
I would say the one you cannot come back from is the one where they took the focus off the 3 main characters and just started focusing on all these characters, like Rath's boyfriend. And while I like the actress that played Moraine, she butchered the character. I don't know if it's her fault or whose fault that is, but that's not Moraine. They focused on, Nynaeve. They didn't focus on Rand. They didn't focus on the three boys. They didn't follow their journey of self-discovery. I don't know what they focused on. Everything and nothing.
The motivations that they gave for Luz Theron in that cold open of season, episode 8, the way that they depicted that conversation, that breaks the fundamental reason for the tension and the conflicts around the Dragon Reborn, which that is what the story is. Now, I mean, it's not just about the dragon, but like the reasons for the breaking of the world and the reasons for the corruption on the male half of the source, and the reason why the dragon, it's not so cool to be the dragon. It's not a good thing. And that change in Luz's motivations, to turn it from like under the pump, the Shadow was winning the war of power, right? It blows the mind, but to make it just that Luz was like, I'm just going to go and take on the Dark One. I'm going to do it because I'm an arrogant, stupid man, rather than we're going to die unless we do something. What's your plan? Because the female Aes Sedai at the time had a plan. They built the Choden Khal, and the Shadow almost took over. They came within an inch of destroying the world by going with the girls' plan initially. And then at that point, that's when Luz said, okay, listen, this is not a good idea. I think I can do it if you work with me. If we go, we can seal the ball, we can take him out. And the girls refused to help him, and that's why there's a corruption on the male half of the source. It wasn't because Luz was an arrogant pig. It was because the females refused to help him at the time. And they've literally switched that on its head. And that is the core message of this story. The core message is that when the two genders can work together despite their differences, then they can defeat the evil in the world. That's the story. And they've taken that out of it. And that can't be fixed. That's a conscious choice from made from an ideological point of view. There's no other way to put it.
If all you know about Robert Jordan is that show, I feel sorry for you. You're missing out. You need to get an Audible subscription and go listen to the books if you don't want to straight up read them like I did. Do not judge his books by that show, because you're doing him a major injustice, and that's not fair to Robert or Brandon.
I would say don't read the books until the show's finished, because it will only make you mad. That's what I would say. It's just true. And the reason I say that is, like I said, because I've been rereading the books post the show, and I've been listening to the audio, and I think that all of the actors should do this. And I think that the dude that played Loyal, I think he probably did, because his depiction of Loyal was like bang on for the way that the audiobook fellow, the way that he does that. It was really, 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 really good in that sense. Kramer captured the essence of what was on the page, and he delivered it through his voice. And it's hard, man, because listen to the audio, especially of Lan. And even I thought this beforehand. Lan doesn't say much, he doesn't do much. They've tried to give him more personality, and I'm like, maybe there's an argument for that. But after listening to the audiobooks, I'm like, mate, that's just complete nonsense. Lan's personality is so good, and the way that Kramer delivers it is just, it's unique. And that's, we live in a world where that's not really celebrated anymore.
No, I'm all the way out, man. I even canceled my Prime membership like a month ago.
Yes, I am, because I'll tell you why. Again, as I've been rereading the books, there's going to be some flashpoints to see whether or not they can get it back to the guts of the story, to the nucleus of the characters that are the best written and the best developed characters in fantasy in the genre. Like that, when Mat has his fight with Gallad and Gorn with the quarterstaff at Tar Valon, how they do that will tell me whether or not they're going to continue down this, whatever you call it, emasculation of men idea that they're clearly doing at the moment, or that they did with season 1. Also, when he meets Aludra, whether we get Mat jumping out of a bay hail and beating up 4 blokes with his quarterstaff. Like, if you look at season 1 and these situations, well, they won't do that if they stick with the path that they're on currently. I'll watch it just to see whether or not that's going to continue, because if they start to do those sorts of things, maybe it can be saved.
As ever, this is Salty Texas Sea. I am Corey DB. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you've seen and heard, please hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you on board. That way you know, and we have things like live streams, which we are now going to be doing every Tuesday evening. Take care. I hope you're having a great 2022.